I am so honored to be here. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Funny guy. It's always the one guy in the audience, but thank you. It's an honor to be here. As Jan said, I'm Karen Watson. I'm just your neighbor, just a little bit east of here in a place called Dallas, Texas. And Texas it's a great state, but we always say Texas is not just state, it's a state of mind. And when I speak in my great state of Texas, not only do we do the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag, but we turn around and do the Pledge of Allegiance to the Texas flag as well. So seriously. So that's just who we are. If you've never been, please come and visit. If you're going to come and stay, bring your Republican values with you. Leave California ideas out. But as I'm just going to tell my story because that's what I do. So I am native Dallas person, born and raised in Dallas. Dallas is still my favorite city in the whole wide world. My mother is the smartest woman I've ever met and the most conservative person I have ever met. Yeah, and I have spoken at every kind of Republican Party, Tea parties, John Birch societies. You just don't get, I've gone as far right as right can go. And I still have never met anyone that's more conservative than my mom. Seriously. See, my mom believed that if her children, got a good education in this country, there were no obstacles that we could not overcome. She believed that in this nation, if you work hard, you dream big, and you have God on your side, you will win. And so my mother, on a teacher's salary, placed my siblings and I in private education. Now, that was prior to vouchers. And I don't know if you guys do magnet schools or anything like that. But so when my mom had heard, because when I was in middle school, and that's where the middle school thing comes in, when I was in middle school and I was still in private school, I went to do summer reading, and I had checked out both volumes of The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire for summer reading, which started me into this whole, plunge of nations that rise and nations that fall, and just studying all that. And so that was the summer where I was just really engulfed in all of that. And so there had been a school that had started in Dallas about 5 years prior called Government and Law Magnet High School, which was a school that studied government and law and part of their curricula. So my mom was like, "Is that something you think you'd want to do?" And I was like, that was perfect for me. So off I went to be a part of this tiny school in Dallas, Texas, in downtown. And we were catty corner from City Hall. At that time, all of the courts were in downtown Dallas. And we were really part of things that were government and law in Dallas County. Well, in 1984, my mother received a letter that said that your daughter has been selected to participate in the RNC convention when it came to Dallas to nominate Reagan Bush. Yeah. Now, in my household, where my mom says, "I think that's something you should do," that meant that was something that I would do. So off I went to be a part of that convention. And I got a chance to meet Ronald Reagan. Yeah. And it was so amazing. The theme of that convention was that it was a new morning in America. And I got what it meant to be a Republican that day. Because meeting Reagan and his grace, his kindness, and his love for this amazing country, I got that immediately. So I always tell people I was never old enough to vote for my favorite Republican president, which was Ronald Reagan. And when I say that, that confuses Democrats because they don't realize you have to be old enough to vote, legal to vote, alive to vote. But, and I've never voted for a Democrat ever because I fell in love with this party right then and there. And not only did I fall in love with this party, but remember, that was the year that Reagan won 49 states. And I can tell you as a person that met the man, he did not care about the color of my skin. He did not care about all the holy huddles we have divided ourselves into. Reagan, as a person who met him, can tell you he cared about the fact that I was an American. And that was it. So left that convention, got with the understanding of what this amazing party was about, went back to high school, graduated there, and I have to tell you, government and law magnet, my graduating class was 17. Yeah, I always tell people try to be in the top 10% of that class. So, and then I go off to this school in Texas called University of Texas in Austin. And anyone that knows anything about Austin, they had this thing that says Keep Austin Weird. And I always tell people that was not a bumper sticker, but was a real campaign. And so down in Austin and UT, we all did the things that, there are like 55,000 students there, about 8 of them are Republican. So get that balance of power shift. Studied English with a language concentration in Russian. And I always tell my mom, people think I'm smart because I speak Russian. My mother always reminds me that there are children in Russia that speak Russian. Left Austin, came back to work for a bank called NCNB. NCNB, we would see anybody who worked in banking would tell you we used to say that's for no cash for nobody. NCNB became Nations Bank. Nations Bank became Bank of America. And for the last 48 months that I worked there, I was the #1 mortgage loan originator in what we called units and volumes in the country. Yeah. So, yeah. And one of the things you get for being #1, and I say only one because there are many things you get for success and achievement, but one of the things that you receive is money. So in 2003, I purchased a home in a small enclave of Dallas called Highland Park. Highland Park is 2 square miles. And didn't realize at the time that I was the first black person to buy a home in Highland Park on a street called Beverly Drive, which is like their signature street. And so I was at an open house, and some of my realtor friends said, Karen Watson, you're on the front page of the Park Cities People. And there was a picture of me saying, guess who's coming to dinner and staying for a while? I know, right? I know. What the? But, so that was craziness. So in 2004, I started my own mortgage company, Karen Watson Mortgage, and so I thought it was just kind of odd in 2007, 2008, where people would tap me on the shoulder and just say, Karen, aren't you excited about this election? And I was like, I am excited about this election. And they would say, don't you just love our candidate? I was like, I just love our candidate. And they would say, don't you just think Barack? I was like, wait a minute. They thought I was talking about Barack Obama. I thought they were talking about McCain Palin. So the 2007, 2008 season was just one of a lot of confusion. And I kept on thinking, what was it about me that would make someone who's never voted for a Democrat, even a municipal campaign, well, what would make someone assume that I would be voting for a Democrat? I was in finance, I was a homeowner, I was a business owner, I was a deacon at a Presbyterian church. So how does that add up to being the fact that I would be voting for a Democrat? And I said it was the color of my skin. The color of my skin was to negate everything else about me. The color of my skin was to tell everyone what I would do when I got into the ballot box and made my own choice. And look, I love the color of my skin, but I've always thought it the least thing about me. And so that was just crazy. That was so crazy that we had come upon a time when I thought we were judging people by the content of their character instead of the color of their skin. And I'll have to tell you, when Barack Obama beat McCain Palin in 2008, I was disappointed, but not devastated, you know what I'm saying? Because I've always said, Karen, only a fool would hope that the pilot on the plane that they're on will have a bad day. And, Barack Obama was the pilot on the plane that we were on. So I wished him well. Honestly, because he was going to be my president in my lifetime. Wouldn't that be a concept to sell Democrats, right? But the truth of the fact is that the Obama administration was a failed administration. That's just a numbers thing. That's not a color thing. That's just a numbers thing. High records of unemployment, high records of business failures, high records of just devastation. The economy was basically shot for dead. And that's just the numbers. And so I just thought that's just kind of crazy that we would be caught up in that. And we all knew, and everything that happened to President Obama was never his fault. It was always Bush's fault. Remember that? It's Bush's fault, Bush's fault, Bush's fault. Bush wasn't even on the ticket. But, and it was like, why are we not able to get out of the nonsense that we had found ourselves in? So when 2012 came around, I had talked to myself, and I always tell people I talk to myself a lot because I don't have that many friends because all I talk about is politics and religion. But I have new friends here today, so I'm blessed for that. But I was like, Karen, talking to myself all the time. I said, Karen, how did it happen that I became a Republican? And I said, I became a Republican because I met an amazing Republican man, right? When you meet someone like Ronald Reagan, you can see what that means, right? So I said, what we've got to do is have people meet Republicans who are kind and gracious and love our country and what that means. So they can see that we don't have fangs, that, that you don't have to do some weird thing to just kind of connect. Just let us connect with each other. And so I'm not very techie at all, and I got with some great engineers who are, and I said, I want to create a website where people can for themselves see what events that are conservative-centric and decide to participate in those things if they want to. So in 2012, we launched a website called GOPbuzz.com, which is an internet portal for conservative events all over the country. So again, this was January of 2012. We launched. We had people calling us from all over. One of the persons that called me, and I keep on saying I need to create an alias for her, but her name really is Michelle. One of these days it'll be Janet or something, but right now her name is Michelle. Her real name is Michelle. So we called and talked to each other, and she was like, oh, Karen, this is great that you have this website because we need an organic outreach so that people who are not Republicans can become Republicans. And we connected. It was just one of those things where you meet someone and you just connect. And we spoke on the phone for like 40 plus phone hours, and it was just that kind of a connection. And so she said, look, Karen, you're just in Dallas, and I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana. She said, why don't you post our event and be a part of our luncheon meeting in Shreveport, Louisiana? Now, one of the things a lot of people don't know about me is that I hate to drive. And so when Michelle asked me to do that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's past Northwest Highway. And the only way you can get to Shreveport, Louisiana is to drive. So I was like, oh, wow. So, but I remembered what they would tell us when I was at UT and the 8 other Republicans that were there. And they would say, be a good Republican, Karen, which meant do the thing you don't want to do to serve. So when she asked me to be a part of that, I said, okay. But I didn't want to take the drive to Louisiana all on my own. So I asked my operations manager, Larry, if he'd ride out there with me. And I think, what did I think was going to happen between Dallas and Louisiana, which is about a little less than 200 miles? I just didn't know, but didn't want to think about it. So Larry said he would ride out there with me to be a part of that event. And so off we go, leaving Dallas to go to Shreveport. Now, if you know anything about Louisiana, it's a different kind of place. But warm, friendly, but the people in Louisiana are just who they are. So here we are into this event. It was at a restaurant. We're in the foyer waiting for Michelle to come in and the other people to show up. So we're sitting there waiting. Michelle walks in. She looked around, and then she walked right back out. See, we had never seen each other. She came in, she looked back in, and then she walked over to where we were, and she goes, are you Karen? And I'm like, yeah, are you Michelle? And the next words out of her mouth were, you're black. Yeah. And I always tell people, I'm from Texas, so I can always give it back. And I said, and you're not. And Larry, he's Asian. So it was just this weird thing going on in Shreveport. And she just said, no, Karen, you just don't understand. After all the times that we have talked over the phone, I never 1 second thought that I was talking to some black woman in Dallas, Texas, about the Republican Party, about, Ronald Reagan, the conservative movement. I never for once thought that you were black. And she said, you need to write a book about being black and Republican. And I was like, well, I drove to Shreveport so I can do the next big thing. And so the genesis for my first book, being Black and Republican in the Age of Obama, started on that route back from Shreveport to Dallas, Texas. And I said, you know what, Karen, the thing about Texans, we're either like all in or all out, right? If that's one thing, you need to know that about Texans. And so I said, well, Karen, you can do this polemic book, the rah-rah, that's kind of good. Or you can truly dig down and try to create a Rosetta Stone of what the heck happened. And so what I did is I got all this data and asked to speak to and interviewed all these Black Republicans, because when you meet someone who's Black and Republican, I mean, that's something, you know, because some people, well, I'm Black and independent. Okay. I'm Black and conservative. Okay. But when you can say I'm Black and Republican, that's a big thing, especially. It was a big thing back in 2012. It's even a bigger thing now, unfortunately. But so just pulling through that and reading through all this dry government data. I think they make the government data dry so that no one reads them, but all the stuff you're looking for is all right out there. So did all of that, and I got so mad after that study with the left. Extremely upset because I couldn't believe the lies. The lies, the lies, the lies. I couldn't believe that they have made this, you know, treated Republicans as just sons of Satan who are sexist, racist, homophobic bigots. I couldn't believe that they made people even think that today that Abraham Lincoln was a Democrat. Couldn't believe that they were making our whole party out to be something it totally was not. And they have pushed this out on a group of people who are very fragile in this country. So I was so upset. But then, you know, I started getting upset with the Republicans. Because I was like, wait a minute. The left, in their lunacy, they don't have an extra hour in the day than we do. They're not smarter than we are. And I used to always say, you know, the Republicans were always preaching to the choir, right? But we need to start baptizing the congregation. Because we have not been good stewards of our own brands. We don't even tell our story. A lot of it's because we don't even know. We don't tell that the Republican Party is the story of abolition, the story of freedom, the story of liberty. There are so many people, even this, when we start talking about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, where did that come from? And then, you know, the Democrats are so wrong on the story, because the Democrats are the party of the KKK. I'm not saying that. The Supreme Court said that when they said that the KKK was a paramilitary arm of the Democrat Party. The Supreme Court said that. And yet we go around, but they call us the bigots, right? We don't even tell the story that Woodrow Wilson was the president, the Democrat, that segregated federal offices. Because guess what? Federal offices were not segregated before that time. So ushering in that, and plus he was the one that, you know, played Birth of a Nation, a very racist, horrible movie in the White House. So why would we allow our story to not tell the truth? And it goes on and on and on. And the fact is that even all the way up from the time of World War II, where Black men and women served in the military and didn't even have the same rights as white men. But the fact is through all of that drama, they were like, look, why should we die over here and do all this? And we don't even have full rights as citizens. That Harry Truman was forced to sign the executive order to desegregate the military, but he did not enforce it. Yeah, he did not enforce it. Kind of like our immigration laws that we don't enforce. But that wasn't enforced until another great Texas guy, Dwight Eisenhower, who became president, started enforcing that order to desegregate the military. And the military today is the least segregated area of our country. So thank you to our great men and women who serve, because freedom is clearly not free, and we have not done a great job in taking care of them. But so going through all of this, and then in 1957, Eisenhower and Nixon, who came out with their 1957 civil rights legislation, one of the boldest since Reconstruction. voted against by another Texas guy named LBJ, who gets the credit for civil rights legislation. I'm like, really? I mean, how is it that we don't know the story? And so if we don't know it, we don't tell it. And so finished being black and Republican in the age of Obama in 2012 in October, but still believe that it would have been the change agent to not give us 4 more years of what had already been a failed administration. When Barack Obama won again, I went into like a funk, I was wearing black all the time because me, everything has to be a metaphor. That's not really the reason I'm wearing black today, but the thing is, it was like, oh my gosh, how did it happen that we as a nation again voted on the color instead of the content of character? Because he did not earn that vote. But people were still afraid, and my gosh, Romney just was so timid in that whole campaign. But it was not to be. But I remember that petition for Texans to secede from the nation. Remember that? Had like over 400,000 people who signed that petition. I was 211 on that petition. Because I said, Karen, if this is the country we've become, this is not the country I want to continue in. And so I seriously was like, let's just get out of this crazy train while we still can. And I met 212 when I was down in Katy, Texas, talking later. But I was like, this is just crazy that this is where we are. And what got me out of my funk was the story about a little church in a place called San Antonio in Bexar County called the Alamo. Now, because I went to private school, so I got Texas education, right? So we studied that, and I got American education, but we just knew our story. And the story of the Alamo in San Antonio, if you've never been to San Antonio, it's kind of like the topography is kind of like, a bowl. So they have like the river walk, and so anything that kind of gets down there and starts kind of smell is going to smell a long time. And so this church held 178 men, women, children who were black and white and Mexican nationals. And they held up in that church fighting for freedom against a general called Santa Anna. And Santa Anna came out of Mexico, shredding the Mexican Constitution, just coming out and doing whatever he pleased, and couldn't believe that there were these crazy Texans held up in the Alamo who said, if you want this, you better come and take it. And they were going to fight Santa Anna with everything they had. And Santa Anna said, well, if he captures them, and he said he definitely would. He said he would torture their bodies. He would make it where people would never, ever fight against him. And the men, women, children, black, white, brown, who stood in the Alamo said, we will not surrender. And Santa Anna came up with 5,000 men. Now in Texas, we may say 10,000, but we still say it was a fair fight. But they came up, and it took 2 weeks for them to scale the wall of the Alamo and overtake those people, those great warriors. And even with the call from William Travis asking people to come and join and support and fight. But Travis said, if you don't join us, we will not surrender. We will continue to fight, but we need your support. 2 weeks for them to take over. And Santa Anna was saying, remember the Alamo as a call out to anyone who would dare rise up against him. Texans remembered the Alamo as saying, we need to remember that so it would never happen again. Later, Texans came over, took over Santa Anna, and Texas became its own nation, which is why in Texas, our flag can fly at the same height as the U.S. flag. Texas became the Republic of Texas, and we are the only state that came into the Union by treaty. So, that is not, and I said, Karen, you're not just an American, you're a Texan. And you've got to get out there, because my story is a unique American story. I started out growing up with an amazing mom who is so smart. My mom would always say, when my siblings and I would always go to my mom and say, Mom, that's not fair, that's not fair. My mom would always say, the fair is in October. We know that story, but I came from Oak Cliff to Beverly Drive in Highland Park. to have my own mortgage company. That's an American story. And the fact that we are losing the sense and the amazement of what this country is because they need to make us victims so they can take over is utter shame. Yeah. So when I got the call the next year to come out and talk to the Oklahoma Federation of Republican Women's Conference, and they said, would you please come out? And I said, yeah, because we have got to keep going. And we have gone on, and we have elected an amazing man called Donald Trump. Yeah. Against all the odds, we did it. Against all the odds. When everyone said it couldn't happen, that it wasn't going to be, they called him every name in the book. The guy who already had fame and fortune risked a lot because what did he need? One more person to know his name? You know, did he need one more dollar? He doesn't even take the salary that he gets. And so, yet, he has been. And then what are they doing now? Everything's a collusion. Everything is this. Everything is that. Instead of coming up with a new idea, that would be a one thing that the Democrats do. Well, come up with a new idea. You know, why don't you grow the country? Why don't you do something? But it's, again, starting to splinter on levels of race. It's starting to splinter on levels of, well, do they have gender in California? I think that's more like a four-letter word here. But you know, everything is so splintered. And we can stop it, just like those kids and those men and those women and those children did in the Alamo. We can just say, we will not let this continue. And it just starts with us. And it doesn't have to be some crazy, crazy big idea. It just has to be the fact that we will not allow this division for one more day. Yeah. But we've got to know the story to tell the story. Because, you know, like the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. So when I finished being black and Republican in the age of Obama, then people were like, okay, well, tell us the story of how that happened. Because the Republican Party of Texas was founded by freed slaves. The Republican Party of Louisiana was founded by freed slaves. The Republican Party of Georgia was founded by freed slaves. I mean, you know, we just don't know the story. We don't tell the story. And then so we have the look in the headlight looks when people call us racist, sexist, homophobic bigots. And that's insane. That's insane. So then I said, we have to know our story. So then that's how I came up with how the Democrats stole the black vote and how the Republicans didn't take it back. To know our story, our amazing, wonderful story. And then so someone said, okay, you've told us our story. Well, tell us the story of the Democrats. Well, that's when I wrote the book Jackass. The true story of the Democrat Party. So, and I was calling it a trilogy so people would stop asking me to write a book. So, but then through begging and pleading, I'm working on my fourth book, being black and Republican in the age of Trump. And maybe that will be the last book that I need to write, because maybe then we can put aside all the silliness and get back to just being Americans and stop in pretending that we are something that we are not. And remember that we are still one nation, under God, indivisible. And that means not dividing on anything. You know, with truth and justice for all. And I know you guys can't see, but when I walk down, you'll see I wear these shoes, right? These like bling bling shoes. And I wear them when I speak as a reminder of the Wizard of Oz story. You guys remember that story, Judy Garland, love Judy Garland, and the Dorothy story. And she was, you know, Dorothy and Toto, and, you know, she's flown out of Kansas because everything starts out of Kansas. And, you know, that book, the movie was from a book. So the book is amazing. Of course, the book is all about politics. And I told someone, of course it's about politics, because someone didn't have a brain, and someone didn't have a heart, and someone didn't have courage. But the amazing, and it was really about the gold standard. And then the shoes were supposed to be silver, so a lot of great metaphors. Get the book, read the book. But the amazing thing is that, you know, Dorothy is off her way to find the wizard. the wonderful Wizard of Oz, who will give her all the answers, will give him the heart and him the courage and him the brain and get her back home. But what she finds when she sees the wizard, who's shorter than she is, does not have all the answers, but he tells her, Dorothy, you could have gone home all along. And I tell you, in this great state of California, you can go home right now. We can take back this country. We can take back this state. This is the state of Ronald Reagan. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that. And I know somehow, some way, we believe that the liberals have told everybody to go west. Now we can tell them, go away, because they are bankrupting this state. You and I both know it. They have taken this state into something that you know is not American. And they're going to keep on going. And I don't care who's saying it. You, just like those Texans, can stand up. And I will stand up with you, because this state is worth saving. So I'm going to ask you the three things that I ask of every place that I go. And then I'll take questions if that's okay. The first thing that I ask is that you join me in intentionally praying for our country. Seriously, we are a nation on a hill. People have looked to America because we have been a blessed country. And I know that, as Brother Stephen did, if we go back to the Word of God, where it says, if my people who are called by my name will repent, okay, well, let's not forget that part, and return to me, I will heal their land. And if you do not realize that our land needs healing, you are not paying attention. 2017 was one of the most horrific years in suicides. Let us not forget that every day, 23 vets commit suicide. Every day. While everyone's worried about what's happened to some kids at a border, men and women who fought and died and were wounded for us are hurting. And for us to turn our eyes away from them is just ridiculous. It's just a higher level of insanity. We need a healing. And if we pray, I believe God will hear from us and will do just that. The second thing that I ask is that we stop all this division. A house divided cannot stand. We are so divided. And, and I always tell you, I'm not an African American. I'm not saying that so you can call me a black American. I am just an American. Yeah. And there are no Asian Americans. There are no Hispanic Americans. We are Americans. When we were in Russia and we were at the Olympics, right? It was you won the bronze, the gold, or the silver for what? The American team. It wasn't the Hispanic American team, and then the Asian American team, and then the white American team, and then the black American. Oh my gosh, all these hyphens are ridiculous. You won for America. And if we can be Americans abroad, we can be Americans at home. It is ridiculous for us to be divided into the silliness. And plus, our history is so complicated. And the fact that people do not understand it is so shameful on us that we have not given our story over. But we must start doing the work. And we have got to stop the division. We also have to stop dividing each other by class. That's so un-American. We talk about the rich as if they stole the money. We talk about the poor as if they were born with an invoice. I mean, that is the most un-American thing ever. And then you shame people because they have success? When did we wake up into this place? That's not American. In America, you have opportunity. Doesn't mean you always win. Doesn't mean that everything works out, but you have the right, you have the opportunity to try again. And that's where we need to let people know. That's what's the beauty of the country. Doesn't mean that everything is equal, but it means that you can get up, start over, and build again in this country. And instead of dividing other people, it is so un-American. And we have got to stop that. The other thing what we have to do is we have got to stop dividing our party. Yeah. because it's a game. You know, are there any dinos in the Democrat Party? We talk about each other and forget the real fight that's going on. Because I promise you, the left will use these fights against us to make us look ridiculous. Because nobody invites the fussy family over for dinner. And Lord, don't we look like the fussy family. And instead of telling people what our true values are. And I go back to Ronald Reagan where he said, the 11th commandment is thou shalt not speak ill of another conservative. Can we try that? Can we pretend we like each other at least until November 2020? I mean, you know, we have such a much bigger fight on our hands. If you don't like Mary because she doesn't get A, and you don't like John because he doesn't get B, well, guess what? The Democrats are coming after all of us. So we better find a way to unify and pull together. And I'm all for primaries, but the way we pull each other down is not right. And it is, you know, when Reagan said he had an embattled primary and it got a little terse, but he said it was the last time, I think before he became governor, it was the last time he said something negative about another Republican. We can follow that example because tearing each other apart only helps the left. And they just laugh because that's what they're playing into. The third thing that I ask is that let's get busy. Join with me. Join with others. We've got a lot of work to do and a short time to get there. We have got to let people know our story. To know the Republican Party is to love the Republican Party. The party of Lincoln all the way up to the party of Trump. It is an amazing story. We are in the greatest nation and the greatest party that has ever been. Let's keep that. Thank you so much for having me come out and speak.
Jane has a microphone back there, so if they want to ask a question, she'll go up to them.
If anyone would like to ask a question, please do. Jane has a microphone.
I'll hold. Oh, there I am. Great. Okay. Would you like to call on people, Karen, and I'll shoot over?
Sure.
Okay. So, by the way, I don't get to have this microphone very often anymore, so I'm a little power mad this morning. So, a question ends in a uplift of your voice and a question mark, as opposed to a statement. We have a lot to learn from each other, but please be considerate of everybody else waiting to ask a question rather than a statement. And don't let my dress fool you. I will, on behalf of Joyce, who's not here, wrestle this microphone from you, okay?
Hi, Karen. Thanks so much for being here and sharing your story. It was great to hear it. My question is this: how do we make inroads into the Black community? What is the call for action that you would ask us to do, either collectively as a group or individually? Okay? We hear your story, and I have Black friends and people in Florida in the same situation as yours, all right? And I'm just, what do we do? What is the call to action to make a difference?
Yeah, and thank you for your question. First, I think we realize the value of the Black vote. Do you realize that at 22% of the Black vote going to the Republican Party, that there would be no statewide elected Democrat in the country? None. Why do you think that they are worried about losing their base? Because they have not earned the right to keep their base. So we understand the value of it, and then we get informed and we get engaged. Because unfortunately, the left feels that they are owed the Black vote. So I'm going to quote a guy who said, the most things, Black people should do whatever they want to do, but please don't join the Democrat Party. And that person was Malcolm X. Yeah. And he said, yeah. I mean, once we start knowing our story, then we all get awake. But what he said is that, that's the craziest party there is. And I mean, he wasn't all that crazy about the Republican Party, but he was clearly not an advocate for the Democrat Party. And we have to do by any means necessary, because we're all different. But we have to go out and start letting people know and educating them. When I got on the speakers bureau because I spoke Russian, and this delegation of Russians were coming to town. And I said, well, I'll host your delegation, but put me on your speakers bureau. So they said, okay, that's fine, but maybe you can just speak to the kids. And they didn't know how wonderful that was for me, because I think that's where there's a lack of knowledge is with the kids at the schools. And if that is an oxymoron, I don't know what is. But so they said, okay, Karen, well, just talk about history. Well, what is history but not party politics, right? So I said, okay, I can do that. So they put me to speak with this middle school in DeSoto, which is a suburb of Dallas, and they put it at the wrong time. It was at 10 o'clock, which is a horrible time to talk to middle school kids, because it's right before school lunches. And then they put me in this room. It was like concave, and there were 3 classes, so I had to speak by turning around all the time. So I was like, man, this is already messed up. And so the first thing you want to do with kids is kind of poll them to see where they are. So I asked these kids in this weird room right before 10, right before lunch, thinking, okay, let's just get this done pretty quickly. And I said, hey, tell me, what thing did we get from the Civil War? What relic did we get from the Civil War? They all said racism. And I was like, and I told him, and I said, I don't care what your teachers told you, because I'm like, they're going to kick me out pretty soon anyway. And I said, I don't even care what your parents told you. I said, racism is not your fight. And I just told the kids, I said, what I want you to do, I want you to choose a day, not today, because we're already like in the middle of the day. I said, not today, but I want you to choose a day where you're going to wake up and you're going to believe for the whole day that you're in the greatest country on the planet, that the wind is at your back, that God loves you, and you're no one's victim. And I want you to believe that for one full day. Because if they do it for one day, they may do it for 2. If they do it for 2, they may do it for a week. If they do it for a week, they may do it for a year. It may be a lifelong thing. And this girl who was the loudest, and then of course the conversation after that became very animated. But one of the girls came back to one of the professors and said, Mr. Kane, Miss Watson was right. I'm not a victim. And that's been worth everything for me. So we have got to make sure that we do not create this feeling of victimhood, which is what the left has to offer. That's all they have to offer, is somebody owes somebody something. And the one thing is, and like I was telling Jan and Jane and all these other lovely ladies I met yesterday, I said the Democrat Party of today is the old Communist Party. And I'm not saying that lightly. I mean, seriously, their ideas, have you heard what they want to offer? Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. And, I was telling them, I said, when you talk about JFK and being from Dallas, it's kind of a weird thing. But one thing JFK said was, ask not what your country can do for you. Don't even ask, but ask what you can do for your country. JFK said that. He was a Democrat. There's the debate on stage tonight. No one will say, ask not what your country can do for you. They're going to be stumbling over each other, trying to find what the country can do for them. What can the country do for you? Can they give you more health care? Can they give you somebody else's money? Can they give you, what more can the country do for you? And then, what more can the country do for somebody else? No one is going to be there with a plan, and but I just know the Democrats of today. No one is going to be saying, what can you do for this country? And that shows how crazy this party has gone. and how unsustainable it is. So, by any means necessary, one of the things, yes, get my books, yes, be a part of this movement. I will do what needs to be done to make sure we get this story out because people don't know. I was in an MLK parade in Dallas, Texas. Dallas has one of the largest MLK parades in the country. There were 6 of the Dallas County Republican Party people at the MLK parade on MLK walking down. And I said, this is ridiculous. Why do we even have an MLK parade? Could it be because it became a national holiday? Well, how did it become a national holiday? Well, could that be because Ronald Reagan signed it into law to be a national holiday? Those things don't just come out organically. That should be, we need to own that whole holiday. People were looking at it and said, oh, the Republican Party's here. The Republican Party was here to make this holiday happen. I'm like, how are we not owning these things that we don't even know? Martin Luther King Jr. was a Republican. I mean, it is insane that we don't even tell that story. And then, of course, right after MLK is going into February, where Black History Month, right? And then someone said, well, why do we have the shortest month of the year for Black History Month? I said, well, the real story is that it was not a year, the shortest month of the year. It was done because Carter G. Woodson wanted to celebrate 2 amazing Republicans, Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, whose birthdays were within a week of each other. So it became Negro History Week to celebrate the accomplishments. So it started out as a week. And then it became a month when another Republican, Gerald Ford, said during the bicentennial, we need to turn this Negro History Week into Black History Month. We don't even know the full story of that. And, you know, and it was like, and even all the way up through to the African American History Museum on the National Mall. If you haven't been to that, please go. It is an amazing museum done by the Smithsonian. And why is that on the National Mall? Could it be because George W. Bush demanded that it be placed there on the mall when people were wanting it way off the mall? George W. Bush, not Obama. George Bush. And I don't even know if they celebrate the fact that Clarence Thomas is the only Black justice in the Supreme Court, you know, and it's like, but yet, how do we not be good bearers of our own story? So the first thing, and then of course, Donald Trump, who has ushered in the lowest unemployment rate for Black Americans since history has recorded it. So all of these great successes, but we have to tell the story. One of the things that I do, like what you were saying, Stephen, there is power in the word. And I had one of my previous pastors who said, read the Bible, read it every day, read it, because that's where your strength comes from. So about 8 years ago, he asked us all to read through the Bible in 1 year. That was the toughest year. And so at the end of that year, when he said, okay, let's go back and read it all again, I was like, oh. But it has been the life for me. It has been breath for me. And one of the things that I always remember is in the Old Testament, when they would say, put these stones here, place these rocks here. And like, why? So that when your children's children come by, they will say, now, why is this? And you can tell them, we walked on dry land. We can remind them how God has blessed us. We need to start reminding people of how God has blessed us and has blessed this party. And we need to, and then they want it. Now, I know Jane says there's some people here who will never be satisfied. And I kept on thinking about that. And I was like, what do you say? You know, suck it up, buttercup. But not everybody will be stubborn. There will be enough who will come over. Not everybody is going to try to hold on to something that just does not reward. There are those people who know that water is wet, and they eventually get it. But we just have to go to those people who are open enough to do it. So all and everything, by any means necessary, we have got to tell the story. Once we do that, people come. But we have got to be the leaders of it, because we can't tell somebody to do something that we don't do ourselves. So we just keep on doing the work.
Okay, if it takes 22% of the black vote, that's all we need. The 80% can not recognize that water is wet yet. What percent are we at so we know what our gap is?
We are about, now we don't know what it's going to be in 2020. I'm hoping it's highly over 22%, but I think we were about 12% in 2016. So that was before the unemployment drop rates where we are. So we can do this. This could happen in California. Nixon got 36% of the black vote. So, you know, I like Nixon. I know there are people, hippy-dippy people who talk about Watergate all the time. I can't believe what Hillary's done. I think Hillary's done a whole lot worse than Nixon, you know. But at least, you know, they found his tapes, and we still haven't found her 40,000 emails. But, you know, the work, it's low-hanging fruit. So we just have to go and pick it. That's what it is. How? The same way. We start telling the story. The Republican Party is it's the party of abolition. The Republican Party is the party of freedom. The Republican Party is the party of opportunity. The Democrats, what do they want to give you? Another Obama phone? They want, you know, those phones didn't work. I mean, the thing is they don't have anything to offer. They don't have anything more to give except more free stuff. And free is just another four-letter word because no one's going to give you any free stuff. So, you know, people don't pay the $20 debt they owed from your cousin. So why do you think people are going to give you free stuff? And it's crazy. So we just have to tell the story, and people will understand. Yes, ma'am?
I wanted to ask, where do you find the black people? Where can we go? Do we do it individually? Is there a place? Do we set up a meeting? I mean, do we go into the churches? What do we do?
Did y'all hear her? She said, where do we find black people? We're out there. We're out there. We are out there. You go find a Democrat and you'll find a black person. You know.
I have veterans that are black,
Oh, yeah.
but I have a big group. And, you know,
You know, it can be started by one. You know, that's what I'm saying. The big idea is not always a big idea. Sometimes it just is, how do I help this one person and let them know that I am a Republican? One of the things that I told them to do at the Dallas County Republican Party, I said, let's just open up the office and host a lunch and invite people to come in and let them see us. You know? Now, don't find the meanest Republican you can and be the hostess for that. Let's do that. But we have some amazing people in our party who are doing so much amazing work. You know, Jan is doing mission work in Appalachia. But people don't know. And there was this one lady who showed up, and she said, I've never seen a Republican before. She did. But guess what? She was listening to Rush every day. Because people don't connect that you're a Republican and I'm a Republican. They don't know that we're Republicans because we are so ashamed of the party. You know, people go around and go, okay, yeah, we're Republicans. Thank you guys for wearing your MAGA hat. That's a sign. Yeah. That's what we have to do. Let's be bold about who we are because there's no shame in our game, as they say. We just need to let people know who we are and let them understand that we don't have fangs and that we're okay and the water's okay and they can be a part of this amazing party. But we just have to let people know. Black people are everywhere. So you look for us, you'll find us.
Hello. Well, thanks for flying all the way from Republic of Texas to People's Republic of California. So my question for you is, because you're saying that black people can be okay with if you say you're conservative, but they have a problem if you say you're Republican. Can you
No, not that the
elaborate on
black people have a problem with it, but that white people have a problem with black people being Republicans because they know that's the only thing that anchors them down. If you start looking at the numbers, I'm a numbers person, and I always tell people, you know, English is my second language because I think in numbers. I mean, I'm finance, right? Finance is all about numbers. And, you know, it's just in politics. I think that's why I like politics, because politics is about numbers. Because the person that wins will probably get more votes than the person that didn't. You know, that kind of thing. And so, I know, right? Especially with your whole new motor voter thing and that kind of thing. But it's all about where are these people and how are they voting? And then you start doing the demographics of where people are. If you look at a map, for example, if you look, because they were trying to get rid of the Electoral College because the Democrats are always trying to find another way to win, and they know that they're losing the black vote. So if you look at a map that went for Trump, the majority of the map, just land-wise, is red. If you look at the whole map and you start seeing these blue pockets, where are they? But they're in urban areas with high concentrations of black Americans. Do you know which demographic votes the most in this country? Black women over the age of 43. It used to be white men over the age of 68. So it used to be you had 10 white men over the age of 68 and 10 others, you'd have 7 of them voting. Now with black women over the age of 43, 7.8 of them are voting. Why do you think they pushed out Stacey Abrams? She hadn't even paid off her student debt. I mean, no, seriously, guys, because they're all about optics. Why are they pushing Kamala Harris, who's black today, maybe not tomorrow? Yeah. Got to push the marijuana thing to make sure people realize that she's black. I mean, but why are they pushing that? Because they know optics matters when message is vacant. But we have to get a message out there that people will follow a leader with a vision. We have got to get a vision because the waters are murky. Black people are hurting. You realize the most dangerous place for a black child today is in the womb of a black woman. You think people are okay with that? No, everyone's silent on that. Margaret Sanger was a racist woman. If you want to know who a racist is, go listen to Margaret Sanger. Miss Head of Planned Parenthood, started Planned Parenthood, yet no one's talking about that. We are not even talking about all the children that are being murdered in Chicago. Okay? We've got some serious problems, guys. People see them. But when you have, the left are like magicians. They have you looking over here, right? Oh, look at all those kids with no toothbrushes. Look at all these vets killing themselves 23 a day. Look at all these children who are being murdered in the wombs of women, many black and brown. Look at all these children in places like Chicago where they are murdering each other every weekend. Look at that. But they don't want you to see that because they want you to look over here. You see what I'm saying? And then what do people do? They look over there because we don't tell them the emperor has no clothes. We don't tell them that we are a nation that is hurting. And how do we just pull up $4.5 billion out of a hat? $4.5 billion out of a hat, don't have money to finish building the wall, and yet we have homeless vets. This is not, this chapter, we need a new chapter, because if this is the last chapter of this country, as a person who has studied nations, from the Persian, the Egyptians, the Romans, the Babylonians, we will not survive 4 more years going the way the left wants us to go. We won't survive. We won't be able to afford it. We won't have the incentive to fight for it. People who don't even love the country, guess what? They won't fight for it. And when you start making people victims of everything, and everybody hates you, and America is the worst place, but everyone's trying to get over here, but they can't stand the country, won't even stand for the damn flag, who's going to stand up against an enemy nation? They are corrupting and crippling this system because of jealousy and just insanity, which is where the left has gone. And we have got to understand and get the narrative and start fighting back. I was speaking, I told you I got on that speaker's bureau, so I was speaking at another school. Now, for those of you who don't know Dallas, please visit Dallas. It's really a wonderful town. But Dallas has a neighbor called Fort Worth. And Dallas and Fort Worth are neighbors, but not neighborly. And people who live in Dallas have to almost apologize to people who live in Fort Worth for just being Dallas. And so here I am, the black Republican who lives in Dallas. Every time I go to Fort Worth, they're like, oh, Karen, you live in that blue bastion of Texas called Dallas, Texas. And I'm like, okay, thank you for that. But one of the crazy things is that Dallas is changing back to being red. Yes. Fort Worth is changing from red to being purple. And so I was speaking at a school, high school in Dallas, in Fort Worth, called Trinity High School. Here it was, they said I could speak to the juniors, seniors, and sophomores of this high school in May. They always, when they let me speak to schools, they always give me the worst time, the worst place, and that kind of thing. So they said, you can speak there in May. It was like 2 weeks before school ended in May. Well, so again, I asked just to poll the kids. What are they thinking? So I asked the kids, I said, you know what? How long did we, as Americans, have slavery in this country? One kid raised his hand and said, 1,000 years, Miss Karen. There were about 300 kids in that group. And I said, well, we haven't even been a country for 1,000 years. So I said, well, let me do it this way. When did we first become a country? In May, the kids had to look up on their phone for when we first became a country. Okay? That's crazy. Then I said, okay, now when was slavery officially ended in this country? So, of course, they had to find 1776, right? So I'm like, book in that. And then was slavery first ended? Because I didn't want to get into manumission. I didn't want to get into certain states that never had slavery, such as Delaware, but just to keep it simple, realizing we needed to keep this very simple. And then they looked that up, and they said, okay, 1865, Miss Karen. Then I said, how many years is it from 1776 to 1865? Seriously. They had to use their phones again. And then they said, 89 years, Miss Karen. I said, now let's talk about something that happened in this country for 89 years, because you have to reframe the narrative. The left would have you believe that this country is a horrible country, that we've done all these horrible things, but slavery in this country lasted for less than 89 years. And now we can have a conversation about the fight that men and women fought to end that horrible institution called slavery at the cost of 800,000 lives.